You are supposed to buy all the items on the wish list. This happened in the early 2000s. The guy whose story this is was the owner of an internet cafe that I used to hang out at the time. After several years of no contact, the cafe owner's extended family offered reconciliation, so he got invited to family events again, like birthdays, and they would hint for him to bring expensive gifts. You get the picture. It was very clear they were in it for his money, but at least nobody came right out to ask him for cash. In late October, early November, the family emails the cafe owner would receive started to include wish lists for Christmas. Not only were the items already expensive, buying through the links provided was about 50% more expensive than buying from Amazon and the like. Heading each list was a smartphone. But instead of buying through the links, the cafe owner used his business to buy from a wholesaler, then have an advertisement company print his company logo on them. That way, he could deduct them from his taxes as advertisement expenses. The cafe owner's family didn't like that. His uncle flat out told him he was supposed to buy all the items in the lists and buy them through the links. Why, you ask? For one thing, the items would be shipped directly. And on top of that, they would get a commission, which is likely why the items were so expensive. His uncle didn't tell him that last part, of course. We found that out when taking a look at the website that held the wish list. Now, a word about the way their family email worked. All the family was CC'd. They simply added their pieces and then hit reply to all. For private conversations, they simply took the cafe owner's email address off the list. But his secondary email address they forgot to take off or didn't associate with him. This way, he found out that he was supposed to be uninvited from family Christmas once their scam worked out. At this point, he vented to me and a couple other patrons present at his internet cafe. One of the guys suggested something along the lines of, "Book yourself a nice holiday and send them postcards saying having a good time." But the cafe owner couldn't close down his cafe during the holidays, as that was when he made a big chunk of his profits. Nevertheless, that remark gave me an idea. One of my internet friends was a crew member on the supply flights to bases in the Antarctic, so we hatched a plan. My friend sent 30 to 40 postcards in a large envelope to us. The cafe owner and I, as well as some other patrons, filled them out by hand. Then they got sent back in the big envelope to my internet friend, who put them into the regular mail from Amundsen, Scott South Pole Station. Aside from various pictures of the stations, often with northern lights overhead, there were pictures of the wildlife, mostly penguins, but also sea lions and all kinds of whales. The postcards arrived a few days before Christmas, and the family email exploded. One remark stood out to me. Cafe owners wasting our money on a trip to Antarctica. All in all, they whipped each other into a frenzy and then planned on confronting the cafe owner at his cafe and lay waste to the cafe if he didn't pay up. The cafe owner then called the police, who parked a patrol car right in front of the cafe, with a couple policemen keeping an eye on things inside the cafe. The scene that developed when the cafe owner's uncles arrived was almost comical. They tried to talk to him in private, but the cafe owner told them they can talk right in front of the police. Their scheme was revealed anyways as, quote, "Not all of the family are swine. Some even warned me." Later, every family member then suspected everyone else of being the snitch. They must have had a really Merry Christmas together. Deadbeat brother crashed my Crown Victoria. Gets a night in jail he won't forget. I'm a 21-year-old male and I have an older brother that we'll call Dave. He has always been a jerk to me. There's only a 1-year gap between us, but he liked to beat me up when we were kids, and he always acted like anything that was mine was also his. He was also somewhat the golden child, which made me miserable. So no surprise, I moved out at 18. My uncle is a now retired police officer, and he took me in after I left home. He even hooked me up with a decommissioned Crown Vic. I absolutely love that car. I don't know why, but Dave hated the fact that I had that car. He drove 3 beater cars into the ground, while my Crown Vic kept chugging along. Well, after his 3rd beater finally died when he drove it into a pole, he asked to borrow my car. I had a bad feeling and said I wasn't going to do that. He called me entitled and said he needed a car to get to work. I told him to take the bus because I know how he drives, and my Crown Vic was off limits. My parents called me after that and told me to just lend him my car. I said I won't do that no matter what they say. I rely on the car and need it as well since it's my personal transportation. Dave wasn't the only one in the world with a job he needed to get to. My uncle congratulated me for standing up to them and gave me a high five. A few days later, when I got off work, the car wasn't where I parked it. I called my brother's cell, but he didn't pick up. Then I called my parents and asked them if he took my car. They denied it. So I said I was going to call the cops, and then they admitted he'd borrowed it because he needed it. I told them he better bring it back right now or I'll have the police looking for him. They called me a jerk and then phoned Dave to bring my car back. He showed back up in the parking lot in my car 20 minutes later. I demanded to know how he stole my car, and he held up a set of police Crown Vic keys he'd bought online. Some were made universal. I told him if he ever stole my car again, I'd have him arrested. Then he had the audacity to ask for a ride home. I told him he made me wait in the December cold after stealing my car so he could walk. He called me a jackass before I drove away. After that, my uncle installed a tracking device in the car. When Christmas Day came, I was celebrating with my family like every year. The roads were cold and icy, so I had to be very careful while driving. By now, you're probably clued in on the title. Yeah, Dave borrowed my car again during the Christmas party. Apparently, he decided he was going to go pick up a friend and figured I wouldn't notice. But I did when I looked out the front window and saw my car was missing. I pulled up the tracking app and saw he was a few miles away. Then I called his cell phone to yell at him. Everyone in the party saw this and asked what was going on. I said Dave stole my car again, and my uncle confirmed it wasn't the first time. Dave told me over the phone to screw off and he'd be back soon. I said he better not have been drinking, but he just hung up on me. Well, while I was watching the tracker app, the dot stopped and didn't move for a while. Soon, we got a panicked call from Dave asking for help. He'd crashed the car because he couldn't handle the icy roads, and he wasn't used to a rear-wheel drive vehicle. So we piled in my parents' minivan and followed the tracker. We found Dave by the road in my Crown Vic, nose deep in a snow-filled ditch. My uncle was furious as it was formerly a car of his department, and I was mad as hell at Dave for stealing my car again. My parents wanted me to let it go, but I said enough was enough and I was going to call the police. Dave begged me not to, because he really had been drinking before he set off and would get a DUI. I said he was going to pay me back for my damn car then or I'd sue him. Well, as luck would have it, police were already aware of the accident and were driving in to check on the scene. Someone else had called them, I guess. My parents tried to say that I was the one driving the car and they were just there to help me. I said that wasn't true, and my uncle backed me up. In fact, one of the cops that was there recognized my uncle and they had a chat. Then they went to Dave and asked to see his license, which I then found out was suspended after he'd crashed his previous car. They then breathalyzed him. He wound up with cuffs slapped on his wrists while my mother was crying and begging the police not to take him away. But the officer just said that she and my dad could get arrested too for lying to the police. That shut my parents up, and we got back in the minivan. The Christmas party was ended early, and my parents drove me and my uncle home since he rode with me. They didn't say much to either of us the whole drive, and just sped away as soon as we were out of their van. They nearly slipped off the road themselves doing that. My brother was let out of jail the next day, and he looked so scared that he was practically crying. The cops there had roughed him up a bit while talking about prison and the kind of things they'd seen go on there. Dave had actually pissed himself during that, and they let him take a shower. That's when my uncle started cracking up and revealed to us that his friends in the department never filed the DUI and just the charge for the suspended license, which was about a $600 fine. My uncle said he just wanted to teach Dave a lesson, and that this would be the one and only time he'd ever get his help. Dave then apologized to me and said he'd pay to have my Crown Vic fixed and would never touch it again. When it got pulled out of the ditch, the front end damage was actually minor. It needs a new front bumper, a headlight, and a grille. The damage was just superficial, thankfully. My parents have pretty much glossed over the whole incident and act like it didn't happen. Dave gave me the extra Crown Vic keys he bought online and said this has taught him a lesson he won't soon forget.